One of the most versatile and endearing actresses of the past half-century has died. Diane Keaton.
Diane Keaton was gone, her family saying it was pneumonia and asking for the one thing celebrities rarely get, privacy. They also asked that anyone who felt moved do something Diane kept close to her heart, look after animals or someone without a home. It sounded exactly like her, specific, practical, tender. News rippled through the industry and then out to living rooms everywhere. That night, Saturday Night Live ended with a black and white photo, her name, and the soft ache of a studio in silence. No montage, no speech, just the kind of goodbye that trusts you already understands what she meant. Tributes began arriving like postcards from the many lives Diane touched on screen. Keanu Reeves called her a generous artist and very special person, with simple words, steady voice, the kind you use when you mean it. Others followed. Robert De Niro, Jane Fonda, Goldie Hawn, Bette Midler, Nancy Meyers, Al Pacino, and so many more, each one circling the same truth from a different angle. She changed the temperature of any room she entered, any set she stepped onto. Here's the thing about Diane. When she played someone, she didn't imitate them, she introduced them. Annie Hall's Quicksilver honesty, the iron-spined warmth of Baby Boom, the grown-up ache and late bloom in Something's Gotta Give. Even when she wasn't the title on the poster The Godfather, Reds, she was often the heartbeat you noticed last and missed first. That was her trick. She could be the center of gravity without pulling the story out of shape. If you've ever watched her laugh on screen and felt your shoulders unclench, you know. In the days after her passing, the legacy people chose to amplify said a lot about what she valued. Animal rescue sharing photos and stories. Friends recalling how fiercely she backed causes most folks only to retweet. You could map her career in awards and box office, sure, but you could also map it in adoption events, fundraisers, and 100 quiet interventions that never made the press. That was Diane's other filmography. If you rewind far enough, before the hats and the white suits became a shorthand. You don't find a myth, you find Diane Hall, born January 5th, 1946 in Los Angeles. A dad who engineered things, a mom with a camera who taught her to pay attention, Santa Ana schools, community stages, a decision in 1968 to move to Manhattan and chase a version of herself that didn't exist yet. That's the part I keep thinking about. The everyday courage that never makes the highlight reel. The years when you're just trying. It turns out trying can be a masterpiece if you keep at it. What made her singular wasn't just the work. It was the refusal to be packaged. She didn't smooth out the edges to fit in. She made the edges the point. And then, as if proving that reinvention isn't a young person's sport, she adopted her children Dexter and Duke and said motherhood rearranged her molecules. Aging for Diane wasn't an exit. It was a lens. Nancy Meyers once put it plainly. Women at any age can be the center of the story. Diane didn't just nod at that idea. She brought the camera closer and said, roll. So what do we do with a loss like this? Maybe we treat it the way she treated a line reading. We listen for the human inside the words. We keep the quirk, the nerve, the elegant mess. We make something that could only be ours and wear it without apology. If you loved her films, watch one tonight and let a scene run longer than you planned. If you love her heart, pick an animal shelter, a food bank, a person who needs a hand, and do something that leaves no receipt. That's a tribute she'd actually recognize. And if you're still here, if your thumb hasn't flicked away yet, tell me in the comments which Diane moment lives rent-free in your mind. The first time you saw Annie Hall's tie? The laugh in the kitchen in Something's Gotta Give, or something smaller. Maybe a look, a pause you can't explain but won't forget. Share it, pass it on. That's how stories stay alive. Picture this, a cramped backstage hallway on Broadway, late 60s, the kind that smells like hairspray and dust and nerves. The cast of Hair is buzzing, daring each other to go further, to be bolder, to be naked, literally. Diane takes it in, that electric pressure to conform, and chooses something harder. She keeps her clothes on. Not to shock, to decide for herself. People noticed. Not the skin on her spine, but the stage can be a magnifying glass, and under it she started shrinking herself to stay visible. Notes about weight became a chorus, and soon she was locked in a brutal ritual 20,000 calories up, then gone because the quickest way to be accepted felt like disappearing. She would later say therapy saved her, and that fear, yes, fear taught her strength. You can feel how that line threads through what comes next. Resilience that doesn't shout, it endures. Cut to 1969. A rehearsal room with bad coffee and a great script. Play it again. Sam. She meets Woody Allen. What he sees isn't a type. It's wit that arrives unannounced, spontaneity that doesn't ask permission, and an allergy to pretense. Together, they end up sketching a new kind of screen comedy, smarter without being smug, intimate without being soft. Out of that alchemy, 1977 hands them Annie Hall. Here's a detail that feels like fate playing dress-up. Annie was her nickname. Hall was her real last name. She said he wrote the ideal version of her, and all she had to do was be herself. Turns out being yourself can rearrange a whole industry. She wins the Oscar, but the trophy is just a receipt. The real shift is the woman on screen sharp, independent, occasionally awkward, alive in a way that doesn't wait for a man to define the scene. The ripple reaches closets everywhere. Loose trousers, button-downs, vests, that fedora. Not as costume permission. Style as a sentence that ends with a period instead of a question mark. Then comes the bright part nobody warned you about. When the spotlight loves you, it expects you to love it back the same way forever. The pressure to stay Diane Keaton starts to hum in the background. She keeps walking anyway, light beside shadow. By 1981, she's on Warren Beatty's set playing Louise Bryant in Reds, a film that moves like a freight train and asks its actors to keep up. Long days turn into longer months. She admits her hands shook sometimes, eyes brimming, terrified she'd fold in on herself. She doesn't. The film sweeps up awards, and when the applause is over, she does something radical again. She steps away to steady herself. Burnout isn't a headline. It's a room you leave before it locks. The rest of the 80s are a study in range and recalibration. Baby boom lands in 1987, and audiences line up to watch a high-powered executive detour into single motherhood and reinvent competence as something warm-blooded. It's a hit, and it brands her fairly or not as the woman who can hold everything without dropping her sense of humor. The next year, The Good Mother stumbled at the box office. She takes the lesson without shame and starts turning toward material with more nerve endings, less glitter, more grain. Scripts that let her press into nuance, where the camera has to come close. Off-screen, the story is human, not tidy. Her relationship with Al Pacino stretches across decades. Love, distance, return, repeat until she draws a clean line. Marry me or we end it. They choose differently and keep their respect. He'll later say she was his light. It sounds like a eulogy for a chapter, not a person, and that's how grown-ups let go. By the mid-90s, she shifted chairs. Unstrung Heroes, 1995, puts her behind the camera, and critics hear a new voice, gentle, observant, slightly left of center. It's not about control. It's about agency. She also leans into the crafts that have always been whispering at the edges: photography, design, writing. Her books, her pictures, the way she looks at a building or a face, they all share the same instinct. Find the odd angle that reveals the truth. And when the culture starts orbiting younger stars, she doesn't chase. She plants trees, rescues pets, walks her neighborhood taking photos of architectural details most of us step past. I had everything, she says in an interview, work, fame, money, and still felt empty. Not a complaint. A diagnosis. Freedom can feel like a wide sky, and also like no ceiling to push against. She keeps experimenting with how to live. And then, the kind of comeback that doesn't announce itself as one. 2003, Something's Gotta Give, Nancy Meyers directing, Jack Nicholson throwing sparks, Keanu Reeves giving quiet gravity. Diane is in her 50s, leading a romantic story that takes age seriously without making it the punchline. The film hits, not as nostalgia but as proof. Desire doesn't retire. The phone rings in a new way again. Of course, the gossip machine wants a romance out of her and Keanu. She answers with a smile you can hear. I love him as a wonderful friend. The speculation runs out of oxygen. What lingers is better. Two performers from different generations meeting at exactly the level that matters: respect, timing, play. If you've seen their scenes together, you know the feeling. It's not chemistry as fireworks. It's chemistry as trust. If this were only a career story, we could stop there. But the through line is more intimate. Again and again, when the world tried to cast her, she edited the script. In Hair, she kept her clothes on. In Hollywood, she kept herself on. When fear knocked, she learned from it. When love asked the wrong question, she answered honestly. When success got loud, she found a quieter room and listened. And when the industry decided who gets to be the center, she stepped into frame and proved it wrong. Then did it again, older, wiser, funnier. Maybe that's what made her influence feel less like a wave and more like a tide. Fashion shrugged off tight rules because she wore permission like a perfectly slouched blazer. Comedy loosened its jaw. Drama made room for ambivalence. Audiences learned a new muscle: how to watch a woman without reducing her to an idea. If you're still with me, take this as an invitation more than an ending. Go find an old interview and listen for the curiosity behind her laughter. Rewatch a scene you think you know and notice how she lets silence do the heavy lifting. Or skip the screen and do something she'd recognize as a scene in the bigger movie. Call someone you're avoiding, donate to a shelter, plant something you'll never see fully grown. That's the legacy worth stealing. The courage to choose again and again who you are on stage, on set, and especially when nobody's looking. The second act didn't arrive with fireworks. It slipped in on a laugh, a look, a perfectly timed inhale. After Something's Gotta Give, audiences realized Diane hadn't lost a thing. The ease, the warmth, that honest spark that makes you feel safe one second and seen the next, it was all still there, just deeper. And because the world finally caught up to what she'd always been doing, doors opened that used to stay shut. By 2006, L'Oreal asked her to be a global ambassador, and it wasn't some glossy fantasy. It felt like a reset. Ageless didn't mean pretending. It meant showing up the way you are and letting that be beautiful. Offset, she kept a promise she'd made to her younger self. Use the spotlight to warm something other than your own face. She was a regular at the Helen Woodward Animal Center adoption drives, rescue campaigns, the unglamorous work of kindness. She once said, "My love for animals is the most important part of my life." And then she behaved like it. No press rollout, no careful announcement, just showing up with sleeves pushed up, ready to help. In Los Angeles, she backed housing efforts for people on the edge, slipping into community events without asking for a microphone. That was her style. Do the thing. Leave before anyone can clap. At home, she took a turn that made some people blink, becoming a single mother at 50. Dexter came first in 1996, Duke in 2001, and suddenly all the scripts in the world had a challenger in the kitchen. "Motherhood is the most humbling experience," she said. "It teaches you that you can't control everything." Which is funny, because on screen she could pivot a scene on a comma. Off screen, she let mess and love and time do what they do. The famous woman in the immaculate white suit turned out to be a mother in sock feet, doing ordinary mornings with extraordinary attention, and that attention wandered in the best way. Photography, architecture, 2 languages for the same obsession: noticing. She'd walk through a neighborhood and zoom in on the details. Most of us skim the line where shadow meets brick, the sleepy angle of a roofline, a doorknob that remembers another century. She worked on projects to document historic homes across California and published collections that felt like letters from her eyes to ours. Her public life got quieter, not smaller. There's a difference. After more than 20 years of relentless pace, she eased herself off the set. Family, cameras, rescue dogs. That morning ritual of seeing the world as if it had just been put there for the first time, this became her rhythm. She never stopped, she just stopped rushing. The influence remained anyway, steady as a pilot light you forget to admire until the room goes dark. There were final crests and valleys. In her later years, she stepped back from the churn, keeping a steady creative beat while holding the people and creatures she loved close. Early in 2025, she sold her Brentwood home, the one she designed and renovated like a memoir in wood and light. Architectural Digest called it her aesthetic manifesto: simple, bright, personal to the bone. 2 weeks after it left the market, she left this world. The timing turned the house into a symbol, as if the space itself was a period at the end of a beautifully run-on sentence. She spoke plainly, even about the subjects most people wrap in gauze. "I didn't marry because I didn't want to trade away my independence," she said. "I'm not good at nurturing, and I accept that." It wasn't hard or defensive. It was clear. A life built not out of rebellion, but out of choice. She became a blueprint for the modern woman who doesn't ask permission to design her own happiness. Her influence never stayed inside a projector. The menswear-inspired look she made iconic trousers, vests. The fedora tilted like a private joke kept echoing through younger stars. Think of Emma Stone's clean lines, Kristen Stewart's effortless androgyny, Cate Blanchett's tailored bravado. A Guardian writer once noted that Diane made strangeness seductive and turned difference into pride. While fashion sprinted toward excess, she kept choosing restraint and somehow made simplicity feel like a dare. Even in her last long-form conversations, the compass still pointed inward, not as retreat but as orientation. Asked about unfinished business, she shrugged in that unmistakable way and said, "I have no regrets. I've lived my way." Not complacent. She knew the edges of her own map and loved where she'd walked. Film was a blessing, she'd say, but life beyond the frame is where the color got richer. Until the end, she kept showing up where it mattered to her. The Animal Center fundraisers, the quiet check-ins, the small acts that add up to a person's true legacy. She didn't perform compassion. She practiced it. That matters because some legacies shine. Hers also held. There's a practical ledger, too. The one headlines love. An estate around $100 million. Built brick by brick over 6 decades, acting in royalties. The steady hum of books and photographs. Real estate she rescued and remade until the walls had a story to tell. She planned it carefully, moved her assets into a family trust under her legal name, Diane Keaton, made sure her children were secure without turning her private life into a public document. Even her finances looked like her, elegant, intentional, no wasted motion. And then there's the other ledger, the one that pays out forever rights to the work that won't stop breathing. The books, the images, and those films that still draw us in like porch lights, but numbers are background music. The melody is how she lived, poised without stiffness, strong without the armor, proof that creativity outruns any boundary you try to put around age or gender or expectation. From Santa Ana to Broadway, to the sets that rewired how we watch a woman lead, she kept redefining freedom in ways you can feel long after the credits. When the screen finally dimmed, what remained wasn't silence. It was a chorus of characters we love, of choices we respect, of a permission slip we didn't know we needed. If any part of Diane's story landed with you, keep it moving. Tap like so this video finds the people who need it, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter, and tell me below, what's your Diane moment? The outfit that changed your closet, the line that rewrote your rules, the scene that still gets you. We're here every week with true stories and untold chapters from the legends who built the movies we live with. I'll see you in the next one.